Your grocery store has less than 72 hours of food on those shelves right now. The moment Hormuz closes, fuel stops, trucks stop, and stores empty in hours. Katrina proved it. Bare shelves in 6 hours. ATMs dead in 48. Stay until the end. I'll show you the exact supply chain blackout blueprint to keep your family fed when the system fails. Think about what is sitting in your refrigerator right now. Think about the gas in your car, the water coming out of your tap, the cash in your wallet. Now, ask yourself one honest question. How long would any of that last if the trucks stopped running for 5 days? Not 5 weeks. 5 days. That is not a hypothetical scenario designed to frighten you. That is the exact operational reality of the modern American supply chain, and it is the single most dangerous vulnerability in your life that nobody around you is talking about. Here's the truth that your grocery store manager will never tell you. The average American supermarket carries roughly 72 hours of inventory on its shelves at any given moment. 3 days of food for an entire community sitting in a building with no backup power, no independent water supply, and no contingency plan beyond the next delivery truck, and that delivery truck runs on diesel. Diesel refined from crude oil. Crude oil that, in enormous volume, travels through a narrow strip of water in the Persian Gulf called the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's entire oil supply moves through that choke point every single day. A waterway that is roughly 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, 21 miles standing between your family and a food crisis that most people in this country are completely unprepared to survive. When that strait gets disrupted, whether by military conflict, blockade, or retaliatory strike, the price signal hits commodity markets within hours, not days, hours. Trucking companies immediately hedge. Logistics networks begin rationing fuel allocations. And the just-in-time delivery system that restocks your supermarket every 48 hours begins to fracture at the edges in ways that are invisible to you until the moment the shelves are bare. We have seen this exact collapse pattern before, not in a war zone, not in a developing nation, but right here on American soil. When Hurricane Katrina made landfall on August 29, 2005, the grocery stores in New Orleans were not emptied over the course of a week. They were stripped within 6 hours. Within 48 hours, 9 out of 10 gas stations in the affected region had run completely dry. By day 3, ATMs were offline, card terminals were dead, and an estimated 1.2 million people had zero functional access to food, fuel, or cash. 1.2 million people in the wealthiest country on earth reduced to complete dependence on government relief inside of 72 hours. And Katrina was a regional disaster with the full weight of the federal government mobilizing. Resources from outside the affected zone. There was no outside the affected zone in a Hormuz closure. This is a global supply disruption with no cavalry coming over the hill. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that your town is not New Orleans. You are thinking that your neighborhood is stable, that your family is resourceful, that you would figure it out. And that confidence, that deeply human instinct to believe that the worst will not reach your front door, is precisely the vulnerability that will get you and the people you love into serious trouble. Because the threat here is not the dramatic, visible collapse you are picturing. It is not burning cars and broken windows. The real danger begins quietly inside your own home, in the systems you rely on without ever thinking about them. But here is what most people in this conversation get completely wrong about a grid disruption or supply chain failure. They fixate on food, and food matters enormously. But the second-order failure that most families are not remotely prepared for is their municipal water supply, and what happens to it when the power grid goes under stress. I will walk you through the specific low-cost household protocol to address that threat in the survival blueprint section of this breakdown. What I need you to understand first is the fuller picture of what is being built around you while you are focused elsewhere. There is a class of people in this country who are not watching these events unfold with anxiety. They are watching with the calm detachment of someone who finished preparing years ago. Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal, an early Facebook investor, purchased a substantial amount of land in New Zealand and obtained citizenship there. New Zealand, a remote, agriculturally self-sufficient island nation with its own water supply and minimal geopolitical exposure. That is not a vacation home. That is a continuity plan. Larry Hall, a former defense contractor, has sold luxury bunker units in a decommissioned missile silo in Kansas to buyers that include Silicon Valley executives, Wall Street figures, and at least one foreign head of state. The waiting list for that facility has been closed for years. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the man whose company is building the artificial intelligence that is increasingly integrated into critical infrastructure, publicly stated that he keeps a personal supply of gold, firearms, and antibiotics as a hedge against civilizational disruption. These are not paranoid fringe figures. These are the architects of the digital economy, and they are quietly building physical analog. Low-tech lifeboats, while the rest of the population remains completely dependent on the fragile grid those same people built. And there is something deeply important hidden inside that pattern, something that the mainstream financial press has completely refused to examine. The infrastructure these elites are abandoning confidence in is the exact same infrastructure they have spent billions of dollars making you more dependent on. Cashless payment systems, cloud-connected smart appliances, algorithmically managed supply chains with zero redundancy and zero slack. A grid that is increasingly controlled by automated systems that have no manual override accessible to the ordinary citizen. The irony is not subtle once you see it. And I want you to hold that thought about automated infrastructure control, because later in this breakdown, I am going to show you the specific technical event that is building right now. One that represents a far more immediate trigger for the kind of collapse we are describing than most people have been told to watch for. But first, let us talk about what you can actually do about this before that trigger arrives. Here are the exact 13 items that will vanish from your local grocery and hardware stores in the first 6 hours of a supply chain blackout. You need to secure these today before the panic buying begins. Item number 1. Unscented liquid bleach. People think of water filters, but a $2 bottle of pure bleach can purify thousands of gallons of water, and it disappears instantly. Item number 2. Over-the-counter painkillers and pediatric medicine. Item number 3. High-calorie cooking oils, like olive or coconut oil, which provide dense survival calories and vanish long before the rice and beans do. Item number 4. Propane canisters for indoor-safe camping stoves. Item number 5. Physical cash in small denominations. When the card readers die, the person with $20 bills takes the last items on the shelf. Item number 6. Batteries, specifically AA and AAA. Item number 7. Lighters and waterproof matches. Item number 8. Baby formula and diapers. Even if you do not have children, these become the highest value barter items in a collapsed economy. Item number 9. Feminine hygiene products. Item number 10. Canned meats and dense proteins. Item number 11. First aid supplies, specifically trauma bandages and antiseptics. Item number 12. Heavy-duty trash bags, which become critical for emergency sanitation when the municipal water pumps fail and toilets stop flushing. And item number 13. Bottled water. Bottled water is always the first pallet to empty, but it is a rookie mistake to rely on it. Which brings me to the $2 household water protocol I promised you earlier. Do not rely on plastic bottles. The moment you recognize a grid emergency is developing, go to every bathtub in your home and fill them to capacity. Municipal water pressure lags behind power grid failures. That lag is your window. A standard bathtub holds 80 gallons of water, enough to keep a family of 4 alive for 2 weeks. Add that $1 bottle of unscented bleach to purify it, and you have bypassed the most dangerous trap of a blackout. Now, let us talk about the catalyst, because everything I have described so far assumes a relatively gradual deterioration. A geopolitical event, a price shock, a supply disruption that unfolds over days and gives you at least some reaction window. That is the optimistic scenario. The threat that is being tracked by infrastructure security analysts right now, but has received almost no mainstream coverage, is the accelerating vulnerability of the American power grid to targeted electromagnetic disruption. The U.S. power grid is not a single unified system. It is 3 largely independent grids: the Eastern Interconnection, the Western Interconnection, and the Texas Interconnection. And according to multiple congressional testimonies and unclassified FERC reports, these grids share a critical dependency on roughly 2,000 high-voltage transformers that take between 12 and 18 months to manufacture and are almost entirely sourced from foreign suppliers. There are no meaningful domestic stockpiles of these transformers. A coordinated physical attack on just 9 of the most critical transformer substations across the continental United States. A scenario that was actually documented in a classified FERC study that was subsequently leaked in 2014, could result in a nationwide blackout lasting 18 months or longer. 18 months, and that vulnerability has not been substantially addressed in the decades since that report was made public. Now layer a Hormuz closure on top of a grid under stress. Fuel disruptions degrading the diesel generators that hospitals, water treatment plants, and emergency services depend on as backup power. A government response apparatus that is geographically concentrated and logistically dependent on the same supply chain that just collapsed. A civilian population with an average of 3 days of food, no stored water, no physical cash, and no plan. That is not a worst-case scenario designed to sell you something. That is a systems analysis of real, documented, intersecting vulnerabilities that are present in your life right now. The people I described earlier, the ones building bunkers in Kansas and buying land in New Zealand, they have read the same FERC reports. They have access to the same classified briefings that informed those reports. And they made a very different set of decisions than the ones most people around you are making. The gap between their level of preparation and yours is not a gap in wealth. It is a gap in information and in the willingness to act on that information before the moment of crisis arrives. Because once the moment of crisis arrives, the window to act closes, not gradually, instantly. The 6 hours that emptied the shelves in New Orleans did not feel like 6 hours to the people inside them. They felt like the normal Tuesday afternoon that suddenly wasn't normal anymore. And then it was over, and the shelves were empty. And the ATMs were dark, and the options available to a prepared family versus an unprepared family were not slightly different. They were categorically different in ways that determined the health and safety of every person in that household. For weeks, you still have a window. It is not infinite, and it is not guaranteed. But it is open right now, and the steps required to move through it are not dramatic or expensive or complicated. They are quiet, practical, and completely within your reach today. Gold and digital assets mean nothing if you cannot keep your family warm and fed when the grid goes dark. You need a practical, low-cost plan that the system doesn't want you to have. I have linked a short independent survival presentation that explains this complete blackout protocol right below. To find it, if you are watching on your phone, just tap the title of this video right now. The description box will slide open and you will see the official blue link at the very top. I will also leave it in the first pinned comment. Click it right now before this information is taken down.